Hi guys, the latest news to the leadership style of Bola Ahmed Tinubu and its impact on Nigerian democracy. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has emerged as one of the most influential and controversial political figures in Nigeria's Fourth Republic. Since assuming office on May 29, 2023, his leadership style has attracted praise from supporters who view him as a bold reformer and criticism from opponents who believe his approach has concentrated political power and weakened democratic institutions. 3 years into his presidency, the debate over Tinubu leadership remains central to discussion about the future of Nigerian democracy. Tinubu's political career has long been characterized by strategic coalition building, political negotiation, and the cultivation of influential networks. As former governor of Lagos State and a key architect of the coalition that eventually formed the ruling All Progressive Congress, also known as APC, he developed a reputation as a master political strategist. Observers frequently describe his style as pragmatic rather than ideological, rather than relying on populist rhetoric. Tinubu often focuses on long-term political calculations, institution building, and elite consensus. Supporters argue that this approach has enabled him to push through difficult reforms that previous administration avoided. One of the defining features of Tinubu leadership has been his willingness to make politically risky decisions. Within hours of taking office, he announced the removal of fuel subsidy, a policy many economists had advocated for years, about which previous governments were reluctant to implement because of potential public backlash. His administration also pursued foreign exchange reforms and tax restructuring, majorly aimed at stabilizing the economic. Supporters view this decision as evidence of strong and courageous leaderships. They argue that Nigeria's long-standing economic distortions require difficult choices, and that short-term pain is necessary for long-term economic recovery. International investors and financial institutions have generally welcomed these reforms as steps towards improving fiscal sustainability and investor confidence. However, critics contend that the reforms were introduced too quickly and without adequate social safety measures. Rising transportation costs, inflation, and increased living expenses have placed significant pressure on households across the country, leading many Nigerians to question whether the benefits of the reforms are reaching ordinary citizens. On one hand, supporters argue that his administration has demonstrated a commitment to democratic continuity and institutional stability. They point to ongoing electoral reforms, efforts to strengthen public finances, and investment in infrastructure as indicators of governance focused on long-term national development. On the other hand, critics have expressed concern about the concentration of political power around the president and the growing dominance of the ruling APC. Several opposition figures and civil society organizations have warned that the wave of defection from opposition parties could weaken political competition, an essential component of democratic governance. The administration has repeatedly rejected claims that it seeks to create a one-party state, with Tinubu policy affirming its commitment to multi-party democracy and constitutional governance. Tinubu's handling of opposition politics reflects his long-standing preference for strategic political engagement. Throughout his presidency, opposition parties have accused the ruling APC of using its growing influence to attract defection and weaken rivals. Supporters counter that party defection are a normal feature of democratic politics and that politicians are joining the ruling party because they believe in the administration agenda. Critics, however, argue that the trend risks reducing political pluralism and weakening accountability mechanisms. The emergence of new opposition alliance ahead of the 2027 elections demonstrate that political competition remains active, though increasingly polarized. Another major test of Tinubu leadership has been Nigeria president's security challenge, including banditry, kidnapping, communal conflict, and insurgency. The administration has intensified military operations and increased security spending while promising improved coordination among security agencies. Government officials maintain that significant progress has been made in several regions. Nevertheless, continued attack and kidnapping have fueled criticisms that security improvements have not matched public expectations. The effectiveness of Tinubu leadership in addressing these issues will likely remain a key factor in assessing his democratic legacy. Supporters portray him as a reform-minded leader willing to take difficult decisions that others avoided. They argue that structural reforms are beginning to stabilize the economic and position Nigeria for future growth. Critics argue that democratic governance should be measured not only by economic indicators but also by citizens' welfare, institutional independence, and political inclusiveness. They point to ongoing economic hardship, concern about political centralization, and dissatisfaction among sections of the population as evidence that democratic gains remain fragile. The leadership style of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu can best be described as strategic, pragmatic, and reform-oriented. His administration has pursued bold economic policies, expanded political influence, and sought to reshape key aspects of governance. These actions have strengthened his reputation as a decisive leader, while simultaneously generating intense debate about the state of democracy in Nigeria. Whether history ultimately remembers Tinubu as a transformative democrat who modernized Nigerian institutions or as a leader whose methods raise concern about democratic accountability will depend largely on the long-term outcome of his reforms, the strength of democratic institutions, and the country's ability to balance effective governance with political freedom. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to always stay updated by liking, sharing, ringing the bell, and subscribing.